The tunnel of light waited at the far edge of the chamber. Not carved, not built, but grown like the inside of a breath held for too long. It wasn't bright, it wasn't dark. It was a narrow passage made of listening. Elara stood at its mouth, lantern in hand, spark in her chest, heart beating with the quiet weight of what she had just learned. Behind her, the unfinished sky trembled. The soil of the first fear glowed faintly where it had opened. Before her, the descent. Ishmira stepped close, its form gentler now, as though this place humbled even it. Elara, it said quietly, if you walk down there, you will not be walking into darkness. You will be walking into everything this realm has refused to say. Ilara's fingers tightened around the lantern handle. So that's where the silence lives, she murmured. Ishmira shook its head. Not lives, it said. Weights, the word settled in her bones. Can you come with me? She asked. Ishmira's light flickered, as if she had asked it to step into a wound it still remembered. I can walk beside you, it answered, until the moment you must stand where I could not. There will be a point beyond which even I am not permitted to go. Permitted by who? Elara whispered. Ishmira smiled sadly. By the truth, it said. She turned toward the tunnel. The entrance pulsed softly, like a heartbeat under stone. Her lantern flame leaned forward, drawn to the passage as if recognizing a hunger older than words. Elara took a breath. The spark in her chest answered with a steady glow. I'm ready, she said. She stepped into the tunnel. The light trembled once and closed behind her. There was no echo. Her footsteps landed without sound, not muted, not swallowed. It was as though the air refused to repeat her. Elara lifted the lantern higher. Its flame burned clear and upright, but its usual soft crackle didn't exist here. She realized slowly that the tunnel was not just silent. It was made of silence, thick, soft, dense, like fog that had forgotten how to hold a voice. Ishmira's presence hovered at her side, slightly dimmed. This place, it said softly, is the first echo that never formed. Every unspoken truth, every swallowed feeling, every buried fear has passed through here on its way to nowhere. Elara shivered. It feels heavy. Yes, Ishmira said. The weight here is what happens when nothing is allowed to complete itself. They walked. The tunnel curved gently downward, its walls made of faintly luminous stone that seemed to breathe. As Elara passed, there were places where the glow intensified for a moment, then dimmed again, like someone almost speaking up and then staying quiet. Her chest ached. These are all the times, she whispered. People wanted to say, I'm not okay, and didn't. Yes, Ishmira said, and I'm afraid, I'm lonely. I don't understand. I need help. I don't agree. I'm hurting. I love you. I don't love you. I can't be who you want. I remember. Every unsaid sentence comes here to wait. Elara brushed her fingers along the wall. 1,000 tiny pulses rose to meet her touch, like frightened hearts startled awake. Why didn't the elders fix this? She asked. They thought, Ishmira answered, that order would be enough. If everything above was structured, beautiful, harmonious, they believed the unsaid would simply fade. Elara swallowed, but it didn't. No, Ishmira said, it compounded, and became the thing you now know as silence. The tunnel widened. Ahead, the passage opened into a cavernous hall, vast, hollow, its ceiling lost in a soft gray glow. There were no pillars, no altars, no thrones, just a great open emptiness. Elara stepped into it. Her lantern's light reached out in slow circles, revealing nothing at first, only space. Then as her eyes adjusted, she saw them. Rows upon rows of faint, shimmering shapes hung in the air, like translucent veils suspended from nothing. Each veil trembled with a soft, almost invisible vibration. What is this? She whispered. Ishmira's voice dropped low. These, it said, are the first unspoken truths. Not words, not sentences. Moments. Moments when someone felt something they did not allow themselves to acknowledge. The realm had no place to put them, so they were sent here. Elara moved closer to the nearest veil. Within it, she saw a flicker of something. A hand reaching out and then pulling back. A mouth opening and then closing, eyes filling with tears that never fell. It hurt to look at. She stepped back, heart tight. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Ishmira studied her. Do you know why the elders cannot come here? It asked. Elara shook her head. Because they carry authority, Ishmira answered. When a being of authority stands in this hall, the unsaid truths collapse further into themselves. They have been punished by power for too long. They will not unfold in front of power again. It took a breath it didn't need. They will only unfold in front of someone who has learned to be honest in their own fear. Elara's throat thickened. And that's me, she said quietly. Yes, Ishmira said, because you know what it is to be terrified and still speak anyway. Elara turned back to the veils. So what must I do? She asked. Ishmira's answer was simple. Listen, it said. And then answer. Elara frowned. How do you listen to something that was never spoken? Ishmira smiled faintly. With the same part of you that used to hide. The part you have just brought back into the light. Her hand drifted to her chest. The spark of first fear glowed softly under her ribs, not shaking, not burning, just steady. All right, she whispered. She chose one veil at random. It fluttered as she approached, as if nervous. Elara closed her eyes. She let her mind quiet. She waited. At first there was nothing. Just the old, thick hush of a realm that had forgotten how to let itself be heard. Then, slowly, she felt it. A tiny pressure against her bones. A tightness in her throat that wasn't hers. A sting in her eyes from tears that belonged to someone else. Her chest tightened. Words surfaced in her mind, not as a voice, but as a shape of meaning. I'm not okay, she whispered. The veil shivered. And I've been pretending I am for so long that I don't know how to stop. The veil pulsed once, a soft, aching glow. Elara felt heat rise behind her eyes. I hear you, she said quietly. You shouldn't have had to do that alone. The veil trembled, then slowly dissolved into light. The glow drifted upward, joining the soft gray above. The hall exhaled. Elara stepped back, blinking. I freed it, she murmured. Yes, Ishmira said gently. You witnessed what had never been honored. You gave words to what had been buried. That is all this place ever needed. Elara looked around. There were thousands of veils. This will take forever, she whispered. Yes, Ishmira said. That is why you will not do it alone. Elara frowned. I thought I had to. You have to begin, Ishmira said. But once the realm sees that its unsaid truths can be spoken without punishment, others will find the courage to speak their own. It gestured toward the tunnel behind them. This hall is connected to every heart that has ever swallowed itself. When you begin here, they will begin above. Elara thought of the city, the people, the quiet hunger in their windows. And the silence? She asked. Where does it fit into this? Ishmira's light dimmed. The silence, it said, was born when the realm decided it was easier to live with these veils than to face them. Its voice dropped lower. But there is a deeper chamber below this one. That is where the silence took form. Elara's lantern flickered, not with fear, but with anticipation. Then that's where we go, she said. They walked to the center of the hall. As they moved, some of the veils shivered in their passing, as if tempted to unfold. Elara stopped once or twice, letting her heart lean into them. Each time a new unspoken truth rose in her like a wave. I'm tired of pretending. I don't want to be what they expect. I can't hold this all anymore. I wish someone would notice I'm not okay. I don't feel safe telling the truth. Each time she honored it, the veil dissolved. Each time it dissolved, the hall grew lighter. Each time the hall lightened, the tunnel behind them brightened just a little. The more you listen here, Ishmira said quietly, the easier it will become for others to listen above. Elara nodded. A quiet certainty had begun to grow inside her. Not confidence, not pride. Just a simple knowing. This is what I was made for. Not saving, not fixing. Witnessing. At the exact center of the hall, the floor changed. The soft, breathing stone gave way to a circle of obsidian. Dark, glassy, perfectly still. It didn't reflect her. It reflected the absence of her. Elara stepped toward it. The lantern's light skimmed the surface and vanished. What is this? She asked. Ishmira's tone turned solemn. This, it said, is the mouth of the silence. Elara stared. It looks like a mirror with nothing in it. In a way, Ishmira replied, that is what it is. It shows not who you are, but everything you have refused to be. Her hand tightened around the lantern. Will I see myself? She asked. Yes, Ishmira said. But not the self you know. You will see the version of you that never spoke, Never left, never moved, never chose. The self you abandoned when you decided you were safer being smaller. Elara's stomach twisted. And I have to face her. Yes, Ishmira said. Because the silence feeds on abandoned selves. It stepped back. I can walk with you to the edge of this circle, it said. But beyond this point, I cannot interfere. The silence knows me. It learned to mimic my shape long ago. If I go with you, it will weaponize that familiarity. You must go as yourself. Elara stared down into the obsidian circle. For a moment she saw nothing. Then, a faint outline. A figure sitting with knees pulled to chest, arms wrapped tight around themselves. Head bowed, shoulders tense. Body still. The light in her chest flared. That's me, she whispered. Not who you are now, Ishmira said gently. Who you once were, who you left behind. The figure didn't move. Elara's pulse raced. What happens if I step in, she asked. You will confront, Ishmira said, the life you would have lived if you had never remembered. The life of your silence, Elara swallowed. And if I don't? Ishmira's gaze softened. Then the silence will continue to grow in everyone else. She closed her eyes. She thought of the city, the waking world, the people crying quietly in their kitchens and on their bathroom floors, smiling in daylight and breaking in the dark. She thought of every time she had almost stayed silent and didn't. Every time she had cracked open instead of folding in. She thought of the little spark that had trusted her enough to crawl out of the soil. She opened her eyes. I can't leave her there, she said. She stepped onto the obsidian. The world dropped. There was no transition. One moment, she was in the hall. The next, she was sitting on a cold floor in a small, windowless room. The air was heavy. Dust particles floated in the light from a single narrow gap near the ceiling. The walls were painted in the color of tired bones. Elara looked down. Her arms were wrapped around her knees. Her chin rested on her forearms. Her body had the familiar weight of long-held tension. How? She began. The figure beside her finished the thought. How long have we been here? Elara turned. She was looking at herself. Same face, same eyes, but dimmer, as if someone had turned her inner light down to a low, safe setting. This Elara wore clothes that didn't quite fit her, a life-sized costume of someone else's expectations. She stared ahead, eyes fixed on a crack in the wall. Who are you? Elara asked softly. The other her gave a humorless half-smile. I'm who you would have become if you'd never left, she said. Her voice sounded used to whispering. Elara swallowed. Left where? She asked. Any of it, the other answered. The places, the people, the beliefs, the patterns, the rooms that tried to keep you small. She drummed her fingers absently against her knees. I stayed, she said simply. Elara's chest ached. How long? She asked. The other Elara shrugged. Long enough for everything inside me to go quiet, so no one would feel uncomfortable. Her eyes flickered to Elara's chest. You have something I don't, she said. The spark, Elara murmured. The other nodded. I had it once, she said, before I decided it was easier not to feel anything. She looked back at the crack in the wall. This is what the silence wants, she added. A life that never risks being fully lived. Elara shifted closer. She could feel it now. The dull ache in this room, the stale air of unspoken words, the weight of all the choices that were never made. Why are you showing me this? She asked. The other Elara didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked, do you remember the nights you almost convinced yourself to stay where you were? To stay in the familiar pain because at least you knew its rules? Elara nodded, eyes burning. Yes, she whispered. The other smiled weakly. I'm the version of you that agreed, she said. And every time you nearly chose me, every time you nearly stayed, you made a crack in the realm. Elara stared at her. That's what the fractures are? One part of it, the other said. There are infinite rooms like this, infinite selves who stayed, infinite lives that never unfolded. The silence wraps itself around them like a blanket and calls it safety. A low hum vibrated through the floor. The room shuddered. The other Elara's head tilted. It's waking up, she said quietly. The silence? She nodded. It doesn't like you here. It prefers its rooms unvisited, Elara swallowed. What happens if I stay? You dissolve, the other said simply. Into numbness, into half-life, into routine. You forget you were ever meant to be anything else. She turned finally, looking directly at Elara. And what happens if you leave? Elara asked. The other's gaze softened. If you leave, she said, you take me with you. Or at least, you take the part of me that still wants to go. The hum grew louder. The crack in the wall widened, not outward, but inward. Beyond it, there was no other room, no corridor, just a dark, soft space that felt like sleep without waking. Elara felt it pulling at her, inviting. Rest, the silence whispered, not in words. In feeling, you're tired. You fought so long. Just stop. Her eyelids drooped. Her shoulders sagged. The room felt so familiar, so safe in its predictability. The other Elara watched her. This is what it does, she said. It doesn't attack, it comforts, until you forget you ever wanted more. Elara's grip on the lantern slackened. The flame dimmed. The spark in her chest flickered once, hard. A small, frightened voice rose inside her. What if I am too tired to keep going? The silence answered immediately, soft, sweet. Then don't. Elara swayed. She could feel herself being drawn toward the crack. Just a little rest, just a little surrender. Ishmira's distant voice echoed through the stone. Elara, you must remember, silence is not peace. Silence is what happens when truth has nowhere to go. The other Elara shifted. For the first time, something like urgency entered her eyes. If you go, she said, you won't just leave your path. You'll leave everyone else who needed your remembering to find their own. Elara's head snapped up. What do you mean? The other smiled sadly. Think of all the people who needed you to choose differently, she said. The ones who would only dare to listen to their own hearts because they saw you listen to yours. Faces flashed in her mind, not clear, not personal, but real. Souls watching, souls waiting. Souls hovering at the edge of their own cracks. If you disappear into this, the other said, gesturing to the widening fracture, they lose one more example that leaving is possible. Elara's fingers tightened around the lantern again. The flame flared. The silence pushed harder. Stay small, stay quiet, stay safe. No one will blame you. Elara's eyes filled. I am tired, she whispered. The other Elara nodded. I know, she said softly. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to slow down. But you are not meant to vanish. Her voice trembled. I am what happens when you vanish. Elara looked at her, really looked. At the quiet despair in her posture, at the empty calm in her eyes, at the resignation in her hands. She saw not someone evil, not a rival self, someone who had never believed they were allowed to leave. Tenderness broke her open. I don't want this for you, Elara said. The other Elara's eyes shone. Then take me with you, she whispered. Step out of this room and let me become part of who you are now. Let me exist in a life that moves. The crack in the wall reached the floor. The pull intensified. Elara forced herself to turn away from it. She reached out her hand. The other Elara hesitated. The silence hissed, not angrily, but pleading. Stay, it's easier here. Elara shook her head, tears on her cheeks. Maybe, she said, voice shaking. But easier is not living. She stretched her hand further. The other Elara took it. Light erupted between their palms. Not blinding, not violent, just clear. The room splintered. The walls cracked, not outward, but upward, letting in a sky that had never been allowed to exist. Blue flooded in, fresh and startling. The crack in the walls shut like an eye that had lost its hold. The silence recoiled, pulling back into itself. For the first time, it sounded confused. Why, would you leave something certain for something unknown? Elara stood taller. Because she had taken her other self's hand, she no longer felt quite so tired. Not rested, but supported. She lifted the lantern. Because, she said softly, I would rather live in risk than die in safety. The silence quivered. And because, she added, you are not my home. You are only the room I learned to survive in. The silence shuddered. It did not vanish. But it loosened. The room fell away. Elara stepped backward, out of the obsidian circle, back into the great hall. She gasped. Her chest ached with the intensity of the return. Ishmira stood there, eyes bright with something between pride and awe. You did it, it whispered. Elara wasn't sure if it was talking about her confrontation with herself or with the silence or both. The spark in her chest burned warmer now, not as a wound, as a small, steady sun. Behind her, for just a moment, she saw a shadow take form, not a looming darkness, a figure faded and thin, stepping out of a vanished room. The other Elara smiled at her, then dissolved into her shadow. Elara felt herself become larger in a way that had nothing to do with size. Whole. Just a fraction more whole. Ishmira stepped forward. "Elara," it said, "do you understand what you have just done?" She nodded slowly. "I've shown the silence that I won't disappear for it." "And more," Ishmira said. "You have demonstrated to the realm itself that abandoned selves can be reclaimed, not erased. Not destroyed, brought home." The veils in the hall shimmered. A few dissolved without her even touching them, as if they had just needed proof that such a thing was possible. Elara exhaled. "So is it over?" she asked quietly. Ishmira's gaze darkened. "No," it said. "This was only your personal silence. There is another chamber below, where the realm's silence waits." A chill traced her spine. "Deeper than this?" she asked. "Yes," Ishmira said. "Much deeper. You have met the version of you who stayed. Now you must meet the part of the realm that never left its own prison." Elara's fingers tightened around the lantern. "Can I bring it home too?" she asked. Ishmira's light flickered. "That," it said slowly, "is what we are about to find out." The hall floor beneath them began to split, a new opening yawning wide, lightless and vast, like the inhale of a sleeping giant. From its depths, something stirred, not angry, not kind, just aware. And for the first time, Elara heard the silence speak, not in a voice, in a feeling so deep it shook her bones. "Who dares to remember me?" Her lantern flared. Her heart answered, "I do." The opening widened, and the descent into the realm's true silence began.